Hi there, welcome. Today we are going to be playing with some acrylic paints, some embossing folders, and this kitchen silicone thingy. I suppose it's for grabbing stuff or opening things, I don't know, but I bought it some years ago because I just loved the honeycomb pattern. So we're going to use that today. And I'm also going to be using one of these Indian woodblock stamps. And our process is going to be that we're going to use some wax crayons, and I've got a Faber-Castell white here and also a Crayola crayon, which is an extra light almond color, so it's just an off-white. We're going to use these to create texture on paper, and then we're going to apply some paint on. So I've got some water in a spritz bottle that I'll be using later, a nice big paintbrush. I've chosen 3 colors here, and I've got an opaque primary yellow, an iridescent precious gold, and a primary magenta. This is going to be quite a strong color, so I'll have to be careful with that. But my red and my yellow, or my magenta and my yellow, should make a nice bright orangey color. So we'll be playing around with that. That is an option to use as well. And then here I have, just as an easy palette, a piece of white paper that I've laminated that I can use as a palette. So we'll have those and our stencils. And then I've taken some A4 paper. For my purposes, I've cut them in half, but for your purposes, you could do full sheets. That's entirely up to you. So what we're going to do is to try and do a rubbing with the crayons, pretty much like you did when you were at school. Perhaps if you did an art class and you were lucky to do that, you would be able to do a rubbing outside of a leaf or maybe a piece of tar or something. But I have this embossing folder which has these lovely wood grain textures, and I could use either one of those sides. So I'm going to use one of them. I think I'll use this side. I'm going to place my paper down on here. Because it's wood, I'm going to use this almondy color, and I'm just simply going to rub all over. Now it's not going to leave an enormous amount of color on my paper, but you might, and I say might, be able to see that the paper is picking up a bit of sheen where the embossing folder raised pieces are, or the ridges are. And I'll try and show you that when I've completed the whole page. What I don't want to find when I've completed rubbing the wax on here is that I have huge big gaps. So in order to be quite cautious, having run down the length of the paper, I'm going to run left to right as well, just so that I don't have the awful realization that I've missed a spot. Okay. Right, so let's see if you can have a look at that now. You might only be able to see just a reflective part of the surface. All right, so that's a lovely bark image, and I'm going to do a couple of the ones with the wax crayon on first before I start with the paint, because the paint will start to get a little bit messy. This embossing folder has quite nice daisies, and I like that. And this one I'm going to do with a white crayon. So I'm just going to rub on this quickly. On these kind of papers that you're creating are fabulous for your collage, mixed media projects, card making, just to create something that's unique and use up the things that you have at home without having to go and buy a whole lot more materials. I also find it's a wonderful way just to de-stress. So that's only been on half of my page. Should we try doing the other half with this almond, and we can just compare when the paint goes on what the difference is. There probably won't be very much because the colors are both fairly light. So forgive me that you can't see an awful lot now, but the magic comes just in a minute or two. Right, so we've got those 2 on here, which are nice and shimmery. If you had a metallic crayon, just imagine if you had like a silver or something, that would be stunning because that would show up really well. And then I have this honeycomb one, which I'm really quite keen to do. It's not going to be as easy because it's a slightly softer material in terms of its structure, but it will pick up the marks. Yeah, it is picking them up, but it is a more delicate mark. And quite often we're wanting a background too that's not too intrusive, which will also allow us to do work over it. So you might decide that once you've got your color on here, that this kind of background would be great for stamping a bit of text on. So let's just do this last section. So we've got a full sheet. And then the last one I want to do with you is this wood block, which has got this lovely pattern on it. It's almost sort of, yeah, flowery, but nice. So I'm just going to pick up a piece of paper. I won't obviously cover the whole surface with this, but if I do a few of these random designs across the page, I should actually get quite a nice picture. I won't put them exactly opposite each other. It's a bit more tricky working on the surface where it's raised and your crayon wants to fall off the paper, but once the paper gets wet, you'll find that that actually doesn't matter because the paper will straighten out again. Let's do another one over here. Try and get 5 on because that's quite a nice pleasing number for the eye, even though we will probably break this up and use it in pieces. So you can see how you can use your crayons to enhance the effect you're trying to get with your design. You could go for quite strong colors like primary colors out of a crayon box. It is actually a wonderful way of using up crayons as well to do these rubbings. And I have been doing a series of videos on making collage papers, and I've done one using stencils with crayons, and you might like to have a look at that, so I'll leave the link in the description for you. Each of the little videos that I'm doing on this series of collage papers are fairly short, and you'll watch each technique individually, so you don't have to sit through an hour and a half of video to be able to find one technique. Right, so I'm just going to move some of these other things to the side because we were about to start the fun part and get a bit messy. So I have got a drop cloth that I've got ready waiting to work and lay my wet paints out on. I'm going to start off with my beehive one, which was this, and it is a very, very light texture, so it's going to be really, really not a strong piece at all. I'm going to put down a squirt of my yellow. It's probably a bit more than I actually need. A little bit of this iridescent gold and some of my magenta. Magenta is quite strong, so I'm going to need very little of that. I'm going to wet my brush in some water, and I'm going to just drag out some of my paint color so that I can mix it on here. And I think just to get a slightly warmer tone for the beehive story, I'm just going to kind of blend some of those two together, and I'm just going to brush over here gently. Having two colors means it's lovely because it's not a solid color and it tends to be a little bit easier on the eye. Might need a bit of water from time to time, so just dip your brush in as needed. And if your color isn't exactly uniform over your whole piece of paper, that's also probably a better thing. Paper becomes quite translucent as you start to brush the colors on, but as it dries, you'll find that it actually becomes opaque again. And it's unlikely until it's dry that you're going to see this light stencil or this light impression that we've done show up very much. So just use a bit more water to spread this out. So I'm creating quite a nice sort of wash effect with this. You could go back in with a little bit more paint if you wished, just to bring in a couple of different tonal values. Quite like a bit of the shimmer in here. I think that's going to be nice when it dries. And so I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to set that aside to dry. You can see here where this is showing as a very, very faint paint pattern, but it will show up more in a minute. So give me a second to put this down. Right, so the next one we're going to be doing is also using these colors, but we're going to just change them up a little bit. So this is the one that had the bark colors. For this one I think I want to go more coppery or goldy color, bronzy, and I might just add a little bit of the red into that just to warm it up. Quite liking that. So let's see what happens with this. Warm it if you want to by adding a bit of the yellow. Oh, I am liking these colors together. Keep your colors fairly soft and liquid. If they get too thick, because the colors of the wax crayon are so gentle and so delicate, you might find that you just lose all your design. If your color's getting too red like that, then just warm it up by adding a bit more of your goldy iridescent color. Loving that. And I'm just going to flip it over so I can easily do the other side, keeping my brush reasonably wet. And with your laminated sheet of paper here, it's really easy to clean up your palette. Right, so if I've completed this now and I think to myself, gosh, it's rather pink for a bit of wood grain, I might want to change this. You can quite easily at this particular point in time take some of your iridescent color and your yellow and blend that, and then just go over to just bring it into a slightly more warmer tone, make it feel a little bit more woodsy. Right, so I'll just brush a little bit here in the edge, and this is already picking up quite a nice shimmer to it with that lovely wood tone. This is going to be exciting. Right, so the next one that we're going to do, because we also had warm colors with that, and we use the almond as our resist, is we're going to do this wood block, and we'll do the same sort of color range. When you're doing your collage papers like this, it's quite nice to work with similar colors so that if you are wanting to mix and match things up, you can. Now this one I'm going to keep fairly light because the design underneath is delicate. Oh my word, look how beautiful that's turning out to be. Very excited. Just as long as I keep my brush wet, I'm going to be fine. You think you haven't got much color on with the crayon, but actually the design is beautiful, isn't it? It almost looks as though when the paper was made that there was a little window in it where this little bit of color shows through to imprint the design. Very happy with this one. And I do want to get color all the way to the edge. Right. That's lovely, isn't it? Now what's going to happen with the paper is that as it dries, it's going to go back to being quite bright and white, and these designs will really pop. This one you can see I didn't get all of the area nicely marked with the crayon, but that's okay because this is a hand process. And then the next one we're going to do is the one with the flowers. Now because they have flowers and you tend to sort of think of springs and things like that, I'm going to make these a little bit more orangey, which I think will be quite fun. Maybe a bit more. Now I'm going to pink. Okay, your red tones and your blue tones are always so much stronger than the yellow, so you do have to be careful. There we go, that's more what I was looking for. So let's do that. And here we go. They're revealing themselves beautifully. They were hidden in the background until now, and this is a magical thing that you could do with your kids as well, but also for yourself if you feel that you just need a little bit of joy in your life. Right, so very, very simple technique using embossing folders and a couple of found objects. I'm now going to leave these to dry. I might, while they're drying, just play around and make a few more, and then when they're completely dry I'll come back and show you what they look like.